Today, we're going to be walking you through working with data in CodeWilling's analytics platform. The data in question is open source COVID-19 data found online, and we're going to be looking at this data and manipulating it inside of CodeWilling's analytics environment. So to start a project like this, normally what we would do is choose which environment we want to operate in. We can choose between RStudio or Visual Studio Code or JupyterLab. For the purposes of this demo, we're just going to stick with JupyterLab, and I already have an instance running, so I'm just going to open that up. We're also going to go ahead and open up an instance of Visual Studio Code, and that's just to show that any data that we produce in JupyterLab is also available to Visual Studio Code and vice versa. So now we're here, we're in our JupyterLab platform in our browser, right? And we need to get this data, this CSV file that we looked at first, into here so we can start working with it. And in order to do that, we could do rsync or SCP or one of those standard options. But since we have our browser open with our JupyterLab environment and we have this CSV file here on our local desktop, we can very easily just drag and drop straight to the directory that we want to put it in. Now this is my home folder and it's asking me if I want to overwrite the CSV file because it already exists, so I'm going to go ahead and do that. And then once we do that, we can go ahead and open up the CSV that we just added just to make sure that all the data looks correct and that it didn't get messed up in transfer. Cool. So the data looks good and we can go ahead and start looking at the data and manipulating it as we see fit. In order to do this, we have a bunch of different options. We could launch a terminal here and just start running Python scripts directly on the command line, or we can open up a notebook, which we're going to go ahead and do. We have a lot of options with the notebooks. We can open up a C++ notebook, we can open up an R notebook, we can even open up notebooks for different types of Python environments. I'm going to go ahead and open up this notebook here, which is a proprietary Conda environment setup that we have. And what that means is basically that it's just pre-set up with all the modules that we could possibly need to do any of the normal data analysis that we like to do. Now we have an untitled empty notebook here, and we could start opening up this CSV guy and reading in the data and playing with it. For the purposes of this demo, I've already put together a Python notebook for us to look at, so I'm going to go ahead and open that now. And we can do that just by typing in the path to the folder that we want to open. And now we can see that we have a notebook opened here, and what it's basically done is read in our CSV data. We can view the head of the data to make sure that it looks similar to what we saw in the CSV file previously. And then we can just do different analysis on it. So say we wanted to look at the total case counts by continent in our data set, right? We could do that. And then if we wanted to plot those counts, we could do that straight in the Jupyter Analytics environment and see the actual plot right here. We can also, do more thorough analysis such as like plotting over time and charting that. And once you do these things, typically after you've created some type of visualization and you've created maybe a new CSV based off the old CSV, the next thing you might want to do is save those files and maybe share them with your team, right? And CAS makes that very easy. So we're going to go ahead and save these PNG files, and we're also going to save this CSV. And you can see now that we have a new CSV with our total case count, and we also have our PNG files right here that we can open up and view directly in the analytics environment. This makes it very simple and very easy as far as being able to view the data pretty much any time that you need without actually opening up a notebook. So once we're here and we have this data saved, we might want to share this with some other members on our team, and we can do that very easily. So to give you an example, I'll go ahead and copy the PNG files that I have in my home directory, and I'm going to copy them to another user's directory who I have access to. It's our CDS jobs user. So I'm going to go ahead and copy those. And then if I go ahead and look in my CDS jobs environment, so you can see now my user is CDS jobs and I'm looking at this environment. And if I look into my home directory, you can see that these PNG files are here for me and I can go ahead and look them. And this is one of the big pluses with working with shared user space in CAS, right? is in a similar fashion, the same way that you can share these PNG files with other users on the same file system, you can also go look at these files in your Visual Studio Code. So you can remember we launched a Visual Studio instance earlier, and it's just standard Visual Studio. And once we do this, we can go ahead and start looking at our CSV files, along with any of our other stuff. We can open up our Python notebook and so on and so forth. And it just goes to show how this is very much cross-platform, so to speak, in terms of these two environments. They share all their resources. So that is data analysis on the Code Willing Analytics environment. Thank you.